Welcome to the Sencast. My name is Dale Pickles, Managing Director of B Squared and the host of the Sencast, the podcast for special educational needs and disability. Every week on the podcast, we talk about a different topic within the world of SEN to improve our knowledge, to provide support to professionals in schools, and to empower parents. In this episode, we discuss the experiences of girls in school with diagnosed or undiagnosed ADHD. And in discussing this, I was joined by Louise Belshaw, founder of the company, The ADHD Teacher. Louise has a diagnosis of ADHD, and as a mum to two adult children with ADHD, she understands firsthand the everyday challenges that ADHD can bring at home, at school, and during the often tricky transition into adulthood. The Sencast is created and produced by us here at B Squared, but do you know we have AI in our assessment software? Teachers can use our AI to help write their reports or to summarise progress, next steps, all those sorts of things. It's really quick and easy. And teachers choose the key achievements and those key next steps for each pupil, so it's still very personalised. It's not going to take those decisions away from you. It's writing the bits that you want to write about. It does all that hard work. And the system can also translate what is generated into 40 different languages, helping to engage parents where English is not their home language. Visit the B Square website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and all of the AI features. Now, let's get on with that podcast. My guest on this week's episode is Louise Belshaw, the founder of the company, The ADHD Teacher. Louise has a diagnosis of ADHD, and as a mum of two adult children with ADHD, she understands firsthand the everyday challenges that ADHD can bring at home, at school, and during the often tricky transition into adulthood. Louise spent 25 years as a secondary teacher and department head, and after teaching, she embarked on a master's degree in psychology, specialising in ADHD in females. All of this led to Louise creating the ADHD Teacher to support parents and young people with ADHD. Welcome to the show, Louise.
Hi, Dale. Thank you.
I always write these intros like, it's a bit short, I need to put more in, I'm not doing justice, and it's like into a big monologue. It's fun. So today we're discussing ADHD in girls. Now, autism in girls is more widely known about. I've done a few shows on that, and there's autism in girls charities and stuff. It's more widely known and people understand the differences and so on. So, ADHD in females, how different is the presentation?
Well, in terms of just pure ADHD, when I did my study, the themes that came out of that were identity, control, and friendship. So underneath identity were things like disruptive behaviour, but on the flip side of that, overachievement and perfectionism, and then masking and just hiding the struggles. So it's pretty complex, and I don't really think it can be summarised in just a quick, handy list. However,
why can't you give me 10 points? It's always a 10-point list to look out for.
I know, sorry, no acronym here. It's all very, guess what? It's all very just down to the individual. Otherwise, I don't think I would have gone 51 years not being diagnosed. Do you know what I mean?
But I know when we discuss autism in girls and we think about those differences in childhood, boys are very much allowed to line things up, do those things. Literally, like you literally are giving them the best way to foster and grow autism. Order things and grow things and dinosaur stats and this stats and plane stats and car stats and train stats. Whereas girls, there's a lot more, and I know I'm being very sexist with my overall statements in this, tea parties, those things, having friends, how girls are expected and the things that are expected of them teaches them a lot of the social things they're expected of, which they can carry on. So actually, masking makes a perfect lot of sense.
Yeah, absolutely.
And also people-pleasing.
Yeah. I mean, you've hit the nail on the head there with the societal expectations of girls and how they should behave. And, if they're boisterous or energetic, it's like, oh, no. Sit still. This is not how you behave. And I know we don't live in Victorian England anymore, but there is still that expectation, particularly when you start going to primary school. And then you get into this realm of, oh, well, boys will be boys, and well, what are girls supposed to be then? It's okay for boys to be boisterous, but not for girls. So yeah, the masking and the people pleasing and that morphing that takes place between girl groups. Do you know how they all kind of morph into one another, but slowly, like they all got to dress the same? I'm not saying boys do this too, but girls in particular tend to have keen observation skills because potentially they feel different, they feel other. And in order to fit in with the pack, they start to dress, they start to act, they start to say the same things. I've seen this in my own daughter over and over again. So it starts early.
It does. My daughter, the whole masking and fitting in, there are some girls who are kind of oblivious to it all, and there are some girls who want to fit in, and they will put that mask on so they fit in. They will do those changes. They will wear those clothes. They will have that bag, do that makeup, style that hair that way so they fit in. Yeah. And I remember growing up in Croydon many years ago, many years ago, and you'd go out on a night out and you'd look around and it's like the girls looked identical. It was like a clone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was all about this fitting in. And it was like you could go, and it was like you'd go home with one of these and you wouldn't know who you'd wake up with in the morning.
Really, Dale?
But you know what I mean? Because they had that clone on, but the moment you're outside of that environment, the real person came out, but it was not ever going to match up.
So it's interesting that, because theoretically, what's going on there? Is it a fear of rejection and that potential rejection, sensitivity, dysphoria that lurks? Is it, that fear of rejection, that fear of being ousted from the group is real, but I've interviewed women who talk about avoiding it by being a butterfly, by kind of being friends with everybody and not actually committing to one group. And that way they avoid any kind of confrontation or feelings of being ousted by being this butterfly and just kind of, and also interestingly, being friends with boys as opposed to being friends with girls. Both of those things can bring about conflict, even though they're trying really hard to avoid it. It invites it because girls don't like, generalizing maybe, but girls don't like other girls who get on with boys and seem to do a decent job of it, if that makes sense. And then the flip side is, well, when it comes to being a butterfly, is, well, pick who are you friends with? Because she said something about me the other week and now you're friends with her. And it gets so complex. So it's quite the juggling act, particularly in schools.
I think there is very much a thing of in secondary school, you bully or you get bullied. And I think neurodiverse, just through I'm going to say in the law of justice in your head, that right and wrong and the moral compass, generally means you won't bully. So generally you're just going to get bullied because you've actively chosen not to bully. And I think that butterfly is literally going, well, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to agree with that. I'm going to fit down the middle and not join. And you are friends with everyone, but you're not really. You're acquaintances because you've never really made that connection with anyone. So you're never the first person to be called upon. You never develop that strong because you're trying to not get involved. And again, watching my daughter, I think she was a butterfly, just trying to narrowly get through that school without being picked on, without picking on anyone, without taking sides, but at the same time, feeling alone.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think my daughter is the opposite of yours. She wanted to people please so badly and wanted to be accepted by the friends that she didn't really know who she was, and inevitably it would lead to some form of rejection because the mask would slip and she would start to be herself, or she'd start to actually become quite dysregulated because it's not possible to it's hard to maintain it. And then that rejection would really hit her. And she would say she really is confused as to why that rejection took place over and over again. And I think if you were in a school and you're ahead of year, or you are, in the pastoral system, there is this tendency potentially for girls to be seen as dramatic. Oh, another friendship fallout. Oh, now what's going on? She's defending this girl against this teacher. And it can all be very emotive. But there's a lot going on there for girls to maintain that friendship. It's very hard once you are kicked out of that group.
Definitely. And I think My daughter, who's just started college, was very much looking towards the end of secondary school because she felt she couldn't unmask. She felt she had this defined role. That was her in this situation. That was her in that environment. And that's the one she would carry on until she finished. Now she's at college, and there is a couple of people she's gone to a college that most don't go to. There are a couple of people who are seeing a different side to her. My daughter was the very quiet, very studious, never said anything, very quiet. She's now gone, no, I'm being me. I'm having my personality. I'm having fun. I'm being me. And she could do that because she's in a different environment. But there are people seeing her going, oh, didn't know this about you. Didn't know you were so fun. And she's enjoying it.
Yeah, that's lovely.
But that takes a lot of awareness, and it's quite hard. I think the whole thing around masking is you have to understand you're doing it. And I think you have to learn that actually you are changing. We all do different things. When you go on a first date, you definitely mask. When you go for an interview, you mask. You put the best version of you for that situation. And you know that. But I think there are children who will constantly change who they are, depending on the environment, but not be really aware.
Absolutely, yeah. And that self-awareness is the key to unlocking it, really, isn't it?
Yes.
I think, and it goes hand in hand with perfectionism and being that kind of quiet girl who doesn't really attract any kind of negative attention because they're the good girl at the back or in the middle or next to the naughty boy. And because they're just studious and doing well, in fact, sometimes excelling, they don't draw that attention to them, and they become inevitably invisible. But I've spoken to women who look back on their life as secondary school pupils and they're like, nobody asked what was happening for me. When puberty hit and things started to change and that perfectionism became even harder to sustain, nobody actually said, well, what's going on here? They just automatically assumed that change was like a choice or it was willful. So I think, like you said, some girls can get through secondary school, get into college and then embrace who they are, and others can get through secondary school and have certain coping mechanisms that have got them through. And then they find that without that stability of secondary school or primary school, the wheels come off quite quickly because college is all about working independently. There's not as much structure. There's no bells going off ordinarily. So I've coached and mentored girls who thought they knew how to get by in education, and all of a sudden realize have the rug pulled out right from underneath them.
I think with secondary schools now compared to when we were young, or definitely when I was young, I think secondary school you were more independent, and there is certain independence around things, but I think there is more spoon feeding. My daughter, who's at A-levels, is going, where are my sentence starters? I used to get at GCSE.
Yeah.
And it's that expectation. I think there is now a much bigger difference between where children are at the end of secondary and going into a sixth form college, and that expectation that you are more or less an adult now. You've been literally dropped off a cliff.
Yeah.
Where in secondary school, your homework is every week and you're going to get projects which last much longer at college and things like that. And also, I think if you change environment, who am I? If I've got nothing to fit into in terms of that cohort, that clique I was in, who am I?
Yeah, absolutely. I think I agree with the spoon feeding element, but I don't think that's through choice that teachers do that. I think like the weight of the curriculum and the pace with which you've got to move through that curriculum is hardcore. And but I coached a girl last year who'd done GCSE English. Now, GCSE English kind of is notorious for you get higher marks if you think outside the box, if you have some autonomous opinions and ideas about writers and so on. But her teacher had taught her verbatim, like, this is the essay that you're going to write now. Just learn that essay and that's what you regurgitate. So essentially they'd scaffolded this curriculum and she'd got a high grade, but she'd learned by numbers. And she was a numbers person.
My daughter learnt the rules, how to answer essays, how to get the correct question, how to structure it for the GCSE criteria. So
Yes.
she didn't learn a topic. She learnt how to write the correct answer for the exam for that topic. And at college, that she's almost like they're being taught how to actually read and understand things from scratch, which she's never had to do before.
But the anxiety that evokes is massive, because they're all potentially, they're already struggling with self-esteem, and they might have some kind of maladaptive coping mechanisms, and then they get into college and that's not working anymore, and I've got to be independent and I've got to drive this bus, and I don't know how to write an essay, which was a common cry. Like, I don't know how to revise. I'm used to revising after school with Mr. such and such or Mrs. such and such, and I'm not used to this autonomy. What do I do with this? And so it's just trying to bring that anxiety down a notch.
So I'm going to say the really annoying thing, but all teenagers have this. So we say that, you hear that phrase a lot when you sit there and go, oh, ADHD, and someone will go, yeah, but all teenagers. And you've got to sit there and go, is it all? Are there a lot of undiagnosed? We always notice the hyperactive ADHD, the disruptive children. And there are disruptive girls. It's not just they're all inattentive. But you've got the inattentive side, and they can mask. They've learned all the social skills. So when we say all, perhaps there's a lot more undiagnosed than we realise.
Yeah, of course, because, and this is one of the issues for me that I can't quite come to terms with, is the whole diagnostic process, and the different approaches that schools have to it. So maybe there are teachers who are aware of the symptoms and perhaps raise it to the SENCO and follow the school's procedures, because you don't want to go running around diagnosing left, right and centre. And like the A-level students that I've coached in the past, some have come to me and said, oh, my teacher thought I might be. And I was shocked by that, because I've worked in systems where it's a big no-no to mention it. And it's down to the SENCO, if at all. So that's all a bit strange. And I've had phone calls about my own daughter where they've rung up and said, are you sure she doesn't want to stay in the sixth form college? I'm like, well, no, not really. She wants to spread her wings. Are you sure? And I knew there was something behind it, but they weren't telling me, because they are not in a position, obviously, to turn around and say, we think she is X, Y, Z. Maybe you should investigate it. Some systems do that, some don't. And this is my issue. So let's say, for instance, that girl doing A-levels remembers what that teacher said. She's starting to see more and more of the symptoms and identify with those symptoms. She says, right, I think I want to get that diagnosis. Goes to the professional. The professional then says, we need evidence from school. Next thing, you've got teachers with paperwork trying to fill it in to say whether it's a yes or a no, whether the symptom, they're seeing these traits and these symptoms. All of a sudden, then they are in a position to identify, not identify, but all of those things are from the DSM-5, which is very much geared towards boys.
Yep.
So I think we've got late diagnosed women who are all coming out going, oh my God, this, it's not anxiety, it's not this, it's not that, it's ADHD, I understand myself better now. But meanwhile, nothing's really changing for the younger females in society. In fact, it's everything stacked against them.
Yeah, because as soon as you're not fitting into that model you're supposed to be in as a girl, it's your fault. And it's interesting is I'm obviously a male and I've lived in reality, a simple life as a bloke. Watching my daughters grow up, and I've got a sharer who shares a lot of stuff and we have great conversations and I'm learning a lot. And it's also makes me look at lots of situations and see how lots of time there are lots of little sexist things. As you said before we started recording, you're talking about a situation, and if you're boisterous, if you're this, well, they're leadership qualities for a man. And it's a woman being unprofessional. And it's all those little things of ingrained in society, how boys behave, how men behave, how girls and how women behave, and how dismissive we are of these things. And there is a thing, I remember years ago, you could just say, oh, yeah, if you want some time off work as a woman's just, and you've got a male boss, just say woman problems. And they'll go, and they have no idea, and you'll get the day off or something. And it's sort of like there is that thing of actually men need to understand more. But I think everyone needs to understand more. And we all need to understand that everything is different for every person.
Yes, absolutely. Individuals.
Just because you loved school and you probably loved it, that's why you became a teacher, doesn't mean everyone loved school. You might have become a teacher because you hated school and you want it to be better for children. Everyone's got a different experience and a different reason. And we're also assuming everyone has a lovely, balanced home life and their only problems are in school.
Well, that's interesting you say that, because there's a lot of parents who will say that they don't have issues in school. Like the kids don't have issues in school, but when they get home, it's a very different story. Yeah. So if you've got a girl who masks and is a perfectionist and is working herself 10 times harder than everybody else, when they get home, they're shattered and they're dysregulated. And I had experience of both of that. I had a naughty boy, in inverted commas, who was inattentive type and impulsive. So I actually think that if you're inattentive and you're a boy, you've got some issues there as well, in terms of people thinking it's willful, it's a choice that they're making. Whereas if you're bouncing off the ceiling, it's like, oh, we can't help it, it's got ADHD. So I think this is a bit tricky. I think there's some disbelief in some professionals that ADHD is exhibited in some of the kids, depending on how they present, if that makes sense. But then I had a daughter who masked and tried very hard with friendships, and just tried very hard, but then would come home being massively dysregulated. And then, if you want an interesting trifecta, then I was coming home, picking them both up. And it was like World War III. We were all like, the Coke bottle effect was going off in every which way.
But it is that sort of thing. You've got to sit there, and it's hard to recognise in yourself that you are doing it. Because generally you come home and you're stressed and you just want to get on with things, and your children are just getting in the way, and dinners. No, you are also dysregulated. So we just had a rule that my daughter comes home, she goes to her room, and then at some point within an hour, she'll come home and let it all out. She'll tell us all about it, but she has to have the hour first. So it's almost like she's collating all the information, putting it in an order, identifying the bits that she thinks. There's always lots of bits we point out that probably annoyed you as well, or that's like that. But that is her process. And yeah, it's nothing to do with home. It's absolutely to do with school. But at the same time, she might be having an issue at school. But in reality, for her, it was, going back to those girls' friendship groups, somebody being horrible to someone for no reason and trying to get her involved. And it was a repeat of something which happened a month ago, and they still haven't learned. Why haven't they learned? It was that sort of generally the drama. There's nothing wrong with the lessons. Might have been a rubbish teacher or something, but generally there was nothing really wrong apart from girls being girls and teenagers. But that is what she struggled with.
And did she have a strong sense of justice?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh, yes. Very much a strong sense of justice. But also she is a person who will, I find it, she's both very observant and very unobservant at the same time. So she'll just see someone who maybe doesn't have any friends and goes be friends with them and be nice to them and brings them into her friendship group so they're not alone. So she's very much doing that, and she takes that on, that she needs to fix that person, help that person. She wants to make everyone to be happy. And then when people are being horrible for no reason, But yeah, I do think, and again, a lot of the stuff we're talking about is very similar to the autism in girls stuff, the masking, the high achievers. It is very, and in my head, this is more the inattentive stuff, the inattentive who can just sit there. And my daughter is, I don't know, with her, my youngest, she's autistic. My eldest, I think she's a bit like me. She gets bored. Her head is bored. It's not enough going on, so she'll do her own stuff as well. But it's hard to spot with all of this.
It is. But I think the more you know, the easier it is. And it's all around us all of the time. Like, it gets to a point when you've been studying it and you've been speaking to lots and lots of girls and women, that you can walk into a room and it takes about 5 minutes. It's terrible, isn't it? And it could be me just being a big old judgmental so-and-so, but I can more often than not spot it at a million paces. And it's not in a foot that's jigging under the table either. It can be something completely different, like causing a confrontation in order to almost like defend. Like when I interviewed women for the study, there was one woman who said that she walked into a lesson and she said she hated that lesson. She hated the teacher. One day she walked into the lesson and it got to the point where the teacher would just go, out. So she didn't even get a foot over the threshold before she was being sent out. And she said it was preferable to be in that corridor rather than in the classroom where she was struggling to focus, struggling to concentrate, bored, and comparing herself to everybody around her who was managing to concentrate. So she used that to her own ends to create this conflict, which in some cases can be dopamine seeking as well. To get that conflict just fuels the fire, if you like. And then you've got this really very sensitive girl who's masking behind conflict-seeking behaviour. That makes sense.
Yeah, I find there is a whole self-fulfilling prophecy. That teacher hates me. She's going to kick me out. Lo and behold, I get kicked out. Did I choose to do things I perhaps didn't? Did I make that job easier? And there are things where coming from an autistic family who will just sit there and when they fall out for the next however long, they will always see the things the other person's doing wrong. Ignore all the good things. They focus on that bad thing and the other person's doing the same. In fact, you can never mend anything. And the thing is, that child who's literally sticking the foot over the threshold and getting kicked out, in that moment, what has a child done wrong? Nothing. It is unjust. And that just puts up a barrier. And you've got to remember, there are adults in this situation. It's not two kids, there is an adult. And I'm not saying just let everyone get away with anything. It's not. But we should always be asking the why. And not just assume it's a choice. It might be, I'm using choice in air quotes. But as adults, we learned how to deal with things by getting it wrong so many times growing up. And we learned the best way of solving that situation. So as children, they're just going through that process. They're learning ways which don't work. And it's not a choice. It's the only choice they see in that situation from their limited experience.
Absolutely. And that self-reflection from the practitioner is everything.
Yeah.
Like, I remember very early on in my career being asked, what are your ambitions? And I was first year into a teaching job. I didn't have any ambitions other than become the best classroom practitioner that I could. Now, I'm prone to a bit of perfectionism. So 25 years later, no, more like, it probably took me about 18 years before I thought, I've got this. Isn't that crazy? That 18 years of full-time teaching. And it was only after 18 years I thought, well, I've got this nailed. I understand my behaviour management now. But
okay.
It came...
I was about to ask, what made you think, in my head, it wasn't your grades then? It wasn't the grades that made you think, I've got this.
No, I wasn't bothered.
It was the children, the connection?
It was 100% the relationships and the atmosphere in the room. And because I am prone to being bored and I'm pretty observant, I became very good at spotting when boredom had crept into the room and when I needed to change tack. So I wouldn't want to be a full-time teacher now. I just feel like there's more, teachers have become more like PowerPoint presenters, whereas I was very fortunate. I was in a situation where I could change tactic and I could just shelve a topic or that particular point, element of that topic for that day and do something different. So for me, the grades didn't matter. I, hand on heart, never, ever, ever got nervous before results day, even as a head of department, because as far as I was concerned, I'd done my best by every single child, by making them feel accepted, by adapting my teaching if I felt that something had gone wrong, if a child had acted out, or I always looked to myself first, like, what can I do differently then? Whereas I feel the danger is, it's just them, like you said, it's just them, they're the ones who are kicking off, they're the ones who are causing the mess. And if they weren't in the room, my class would be perfect. Well, where's the fun in that? You've got to be self-reflective. You've got to think, okay, so maybe next time I'm going to let them walk in late. I'm going to ignore them. I'm going to carry on with my introduction. Let's just see what happens and do these things that kind of rattle them to see how they respond. And in my experience, they respond, first of all, by going, well, where's my conflict? I've walked in late. Hello, I'd like my conflict, please. And when you don't give it them, they're just a bit, and I love it. I love getting them out of that comfort zone, that discomfort zone. And they end up just sitting down and like, oh, well, that was a bit boring. And then that's where the rewards come in. You go, okay, right. So you're a bit late. However, they've all started. So I'm going to bet you that you will be able to complete this starter in half the time that they need. And boom, you've got the level of that competition, and then you've got them. So I did spend a long time figuring out little strategies and little tactics.
That goes back to right at the beginning. I asked for your 10-point list of ADHD in girls. Is that thing, we all love that because it's a nice, simple thing. And in reality, there is no simple list for any child, neurodiverse or not. There is no, here are the 10 things. What you basically want is children who want to come to your class, children who want to learn, children who feel confident in raising concerns with you. If you have that in your classroom, their results are going to be their best they possibly could be. But the problem with that process is I can't give you a 10 bullet point list on this is what will make your classroom perfect. It really depends. And some will say, and I did a great one with Katrina Lowry on behaviourism and stuff, of I'm shouting, I'm pulling them up for being late because I care, because they're missing out on their education and I care. Actually, if you care, you wouldn't cause that confrontation. There is a not caring, no confrontation. And there is a caring, no confrontation. And they are completely different.
Yeah.
The one is letting them come in and asking the why and trying to find out how can we avoid it. I always remember secondary school, I lived really close. I just did not see this point of 20 minutes of registration every morning. Sitting there, you get in at 8:30, you sat there to 8:50 and then you went to your lesson. What was the point? We took the register. So I just decided, 10 or 11, just not to turn up, really. I would walk into school 15 minutes late. I would walk into registration. I'd put my tie on as I'm walking in. So you can't really have a go at me because I'm already putting it on. I'd worked out the last minute to start doing it, so he couldn't have a go at me. And I'd walk in, he'd just look at me and would just not mark me as late. He always marked me as present. He knew. Brilliant. What would the fight be? What would the fight be? He'd say, oh, there could be important information that you hear. I was like, cool. So what was the important information I missed? Because I was one of those annoying little bleeps. And he wouldn't. And he just sat there and went, there's no point. And he was, because he kind of didn't cause me issues where there was no need to be an issue, but he also at times did care. He was one of my favourite teachers. He was my tutor, but he just went, there's no point in fighting this. It's like parent picking your battles.
Absolutely, yeah. Tactical ignoring, which can get a bashing from some professionals. We've mentioned, for me, tactical ignoring was huge. Like, I remember one girl in my last year of teaching, she'd come in and she was a foot taller than everybody else, including myself. And she would come in and want to disrupt the lesson. I mean, again, if we're really thinking about why she was doing that, there's a million different reasons. But fact is, she would go around the room, she'd go over to the window, she'd sit in a chair. I would gently say, maybe come over here now. And she would, but she'd maybe go a circuitous route. And then eventually she'd sit down. And it was this whole rigmarole. And the class would kind of get used to it. I didn't mind it. For me, it was her having a movement break between one lesson to another. And her just like stretching her muscles, if you like. And then eventually, not like her metaphorical muscles. And then eventually she'd sit down in the seat I'd allocated to her, which she hated, but was perfect because it was right near the door and it was just perfect for her. And she knew where the boundaries were with me. So, okay, I'm going to give you this rope. You can walk around the room and you can try and disrupt the beginning, but we both know that sooner or later you are going to sit on that chair because we've had consequences in the past for you not doing that. And I am very consistent in what my boundaries are. So if you spend longer than 5 minutes, messing about in the room. I'm going to be annoyed and I'm probably going to ask you to sit, but I'm going to give you that little bit of wriggle room. And then I know she's going to sit because she knows I care enough to let her have that movement, if that makes sense. And then she became a lot more settled. And over time, she didn't even need to do any of that posturing, but it did depend on where she'd come from. And that's the thing. Context is everything. So if she'd come in after having an hour-long assessment in science, guess what? She's going to be pretty dysregulated and she's bored out of her mind and she wants that little dopamine hit. So she's going to seek out that conflict. And instead, I didn't give it her. Instead, I give her some time to just bring that down a notch and sit down. But it's very different for different folks, isn't it? That is not going to necessarily work for a teacher who's listening, who's got a child who's confrontational. It all just depends on that individual. But tactical ignoring and not being reactive is probably on the list. If we were going to invent a list, that would probably be on there, if I'm honest, Dale.
But it's super nanny. Choose your battles as a parent.
Yeah.
Just choose your battles. Does something really matter? And I don't mean in principle. I don't mean at higher level. These are the rules. In the classroom, in the moment, at home, in the moment, does me picking that battle matter? And that's what you've got to ask yourself, not ask the child. Be the adult, make that decision and go, I can't let it go. Yeah?
Mm.
There are times when you have a really good point for maybe picking that battle, but it will be a battle and you might think I'm going to lose it. And there are times when I've been in that situation that actually I'm going to let them go. I'm going to let them make that mistake. And sometimes you have to do that. It's how you learn through mistakes. But also is when you do have that point, if you're picking a battle because they're already heightened, they're already slightly dysregulated, this isn't a learning moment.
Anybody.
So take that, write it down in your head, or metaphorically or physically write it down. And at the end of the lesson, then bring it up. A week later, last week you came into the lesson, this happened. Much better place. They've now processed it, they've gone through it all, they've slept on it, whatever the issue was resolved, and they can now see it wasn't a big thing. And actually, probably that's when you deal with it. Don't pick a battle because it's your right, it's your privilege, you're the adult, you're the teacher, you're the one who should be respected. Don't. You should both be respected, and sometimes we all have bad days. And to me, what I always want to do is it's not be the bigger person, not be the person who's right, not the person who's pointing something out. I'd rather, my whole aim with everything is to always come to a solution that works for everyone. I don't want this to happen again because it is affecting them. So
absolutely.
Letting that girl kind of have 5 minutes walking around, what's the impact? Everyone gets used to it. We're generally on a starter activity. I'm not really in the heavy stuff yet. So what's it really impacting in that moment? And the answer is not a lot.
And if you are that teacher who they like and they grow to have a relationship with, they will be so loyal to you. They will dedicate themselves to that lesson and you. And really all you've done is be very clear about what those boundaries are. And I think emotional intelligence and not being too hung up on power are two key essentials for any teacher. And I feel with just a little bit of pushback from some students, particularly girls, they feel threatened. They feel like that power is threatened and that they're the only ones in that classroom that has ultimate control. And it can result in shouting. And the vast majority of students I coach hate being shouted at. And it results in defensive behaviour, doesn't it? The eye rolling and the tutting. And that is a response to the shouting. It's not I don't care whether you're shouting at me or not. They're actually caring a lot about that, probably more than the average. So there are lots of different ways to skin a cat, isn't there?
And generally, if you're shouting, you're dysregulated.
Yes. Yeah, you're not exactly
there is
being a model.
Shouting. And if you're acting and shouting, then you've learned something which at work to some situation. I never get that either from any point of view. Apart from that's the only way you can make people listen to you. You can't persuade them with logic or anything else. You've got to do the scary bit. That makes no sense to me. If you are properly shouting, you've already lost.
100%, 100%. I think with girls, yes, you've got some of the disruptive behaviour, but a lot of the women I spoke to it was almost a 50-50 split. There was 2 women who started off in year 7, coming out of primary school, and they literally called primary school a bubble. Went into secondary school, that bubble popped, and it was a slow decline. Whereas other women spoke about hitting puberty and literally overnight changing, as in one woman spoke about being a perfectionist, striving for that praise. That praise was self-efficacy. That praise was everything. That's what they were aiming for. But one day she said she woke up and she was like, why am I staying up till 1 a.m. to do extra maths? I'm not really getting seen anymore. I'm not receiving that praise. And actually that praise doesn't even feel that good anymore. So sod it. And she literally went the other way. She went into a more disruptive mode, more challenging mode. And her academic performance took a steep decline. And by the end of year 11, she was looking after her cousin's baby. She was barely in school. She was missing some of her exams. And she said, nobody asked why. Nobody said, why has there been this sudden change in behaviour? And for me, the pinch point is year 8, year 9, when puberty hits, sometimes even earlier than that, when puberty hits and those hormones alter, and they alter ADHD symptoms, just like they do for late diagnosed women who are going through perimenopause and menopause. Hello. Similar things can happen at puberty. And I think, if anything, awareness around that needs to be better, and training around how girls might present, particularly those who've changed, overnight, or gradually become more anxious, or become more, school refusers. We tend to just go, it's anxiety, it's depression, but could it be ADHD? Just that word, could it be ADHD? Let's not dismiss that.
I'm going to simplify that, but you talk about a girl who probably received lots of praise, brightest in school at primary, went to secondary, didn't get that praise, and basically went, you lot don't care about me. I'm going to test to see if you care. And no one did care. I know I've summarised it in a very simplistic way, but in my head, when those sorts of things happen, and if someone asks why, care. Someone stepped in, not detention, not punishment, not you're letting yourself down, think of your future, none of that, care. And that would have been a very different trajectory.
Yeah, and at least 3 of the participants said that if somebody had just stopped and asked why, would have made a big difference. One girl said she'd been taken out of a form tutor group and put in with an older teacher, and she said he actually listened to me and got to know me, and that made a massive difference to my overall school experience. But she was really incensed about moving form tutors. She said it wasn't me, she's got that justice sensitivity. And, I've spoken to women about this in the past, and I've spoken about the study and this whole thing of care and people asking why, and they've literally burst into tears because their experience has been the same, just being overlooked, especially if you're studious and you're just getting on with it, or, there's that decline, or that sudden change can be internal, you can't see it, it's being masked.
But there is a thing, I'm reflecting on us as parents, is when your child's in primary school, generally at least once a year, you go in by law for a celebration assembly. Every child in every year gets a celebration certificate once. And at the end of the year, they're if you're there in September, your child's done something. If you're getting it in July, they're clutching at straws.
Wouldn't know, I never got one.
But this is a new thing. So my daughter, you'd go in there and they're like, yes, for his perseverance. And you're literally going... But that's the thing, it is they're trying to but actually they should be much more you have, and it kind of comes across as condescending, but actually for that child it is, and I wish they actually would reword it slightly. Some of them are a bit, but actually for that child to be in that year, that's amazing. So we go in, you go for award assemblies, you have parents in where you get 20 minutes or so. It's a longer thing going on. There's much more parental involvement. And then and your parents come into the playground and they chat to teacher at the beginning, the end. There's a lot more Oh, she did really well today. He did really well. Oh, she did this. Oh, you've brought that in. Oh, let's celebrate this. That all suddenly stops at secondary, not only just from the school, but the parents kind of step back as well.
Yeah.
And it's like, have you done your homework? You need to do it. You can't sit in your game all. Actually, as parents, I think our expectations are high for our children. And we kind of, a light switches. It's like, yay, no more nativities, no more sports day we have to go to. But actually, you were turning up for your child and telling them they mattered.
Who is that?
That doesn't happen at secondary. There is very few turning up and showing your child you matter to the child. Also, they walk home alone. Oh, I might be able to work, but get back to job. I might be able to do this. Things like that. Home life can change going to secondary because they are more independent. And again, that home life being different can also mean that lack of support, that lack of that foundation they've had suddenly goes away.
Yeah. And the pace and the pressures that teachers are under, the pace that they have to go at, the pressures that they're under doesn't always mean that they can have phone calls to communicate good stuff.
No.
It's more often than not, it's the negative stuff. But equally, like, I was coaching the other week, and this girl who's like highly dysregulated in school said, when we talked about home, she had a very different demeanour. And she said, oh, I have a box at home. I put everything in the box. So homework goes in there, my school bag, my school shoes, my blazer. And I was thinking to myself, well, that's what we need in school. We need to have communication between what's working at home, because clearly parents are doing a great job there and they're putting strategies in place, with school not so much. And I said, so what about a locker? And she looked at me like, a locker would be like the nerdiest thing imaginable. I'm not having a locker. But maybe there's a halfway house. So that, like you said, that communication between home and school could be massively valuable and might just keep some kids who don't actually make it to GCSEs in.
And it's interesting is there's a lot of talk at the moment about better communication between school and home. And I think people kind of hear that phrase verbatim, from school to home. We need to put more messages out. To me, communication is a two-way thing. And how, as a school, how have you got that communication set up so you can share and they can respond, and they can share and you can respond? That should be increased, because there are challenges going on. Either end could have an inkling of what might make this better. Either end might have a bit of a tip, something they've noticed, and sharing it. That's what should be happening. And I think I've been to a lot of schools. We have software which helps communication, but there is a fear of what the parents might say. There's a fear, and it's like we've got to get past that fear to actually go open up those conversations. Yes, there might be, oh, you finally going to listen to me. I'm going to get this off my chest. But hopefully when they've got that off the chest, now we can have real communication.
Yeah, particularly if you're going for a diagnosis and you ask the school for evidence. And I've seen this a lot with girls who mask. At home, they're demonstrating all of the traits. And then in school, they ask for backup, essentially, and evidence. And depending on how well teachers have been trained, and also, this is a bit of a tricky one, their relationship with that pupil. Let's call it as it is. Like if some teachers do not take to some disruptive pupils, which is going to happen, when that form comes in saying, do they do this, do they do that, there is this potential tendency to say, well, no, it's not ADHD, it's being naughty, it's willfulness. I was sat in a staff room just last week and heard the teaching assistant say, I've just followed this class from one teacher to another, and everybody with diagnosed ADHD in the first class were appallingly behaved, but in the second one, they were brilliantly behaved. What's going on there? What choice is being made? And I was sat there thinking, it isn't the kids, it's the teacher. It's whatever the teacher's doing that makes the difference, whether that's training or just a greater understanding. But for me, I've seen too many girls not get the diagnosis or not go forward with the diagnosis because they're not being supported by school, and the teachers don't know what ADHD in girls looks like. So they are crossing it They're just reacting to the DSM-5, aren't they? That criteria. So you've got this big disconnect.
It's a real disconnect. So, with my daughter, she was really struggling in her mocks, she was running out of time because it took her so long to process the information. She went, yes, they've told her, but I need 20 minutes to understand it all first. And then she talked to one of the teachers, and one of her teachers said, and she'd had a nice conversation, so my daughter trusted her and opened up, and it was great. And she said, oh, you talk to Senko, you should be able to get extra time based on all of this. And so I contacted the Senko, and she literally almost responded with, like, there's nothing wrong with your daughter. I was like, you're right, there's nothing wrong, but she's autistic. And it was kind of it started going back and forth, like, oh, I think you're reacting, there's no concern. And I was like, well, she got this through CAMS, so there obviously have been concerns. There's a whole history here going back for 4 years. And she goes, well, I'll ask the teachers, but they'll probably come back with nothing. And I'm like, so you've already decided? You've already decided?
Yes.
And then the teachers came back and she went, no teacher raised anything. And I asked my daughter and she went, no, one of the teachers asked me and I told them. I'm like, so I know at least 2 teachers would have raised something, but perhaps it was how it was asked. And I just said to my daughter, do you want me to pick a fight or do you want me to leave it? And she just went, leave it.
Oh, what a shame.
And I kind of get it because it was just giving her more stress. And my whole point coming up to GCSEs was I've got to manage her stress as best as possible.
Yeah.
Additional time would have been great. But if I've got to fight, that's going to be more stress.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't have to fight.
No, you shouldn't have to fight. And then I feel like girls sometimes have double the fight because, they go to the GP and depending on how well trained and knowledgeable the GP is, they don't even get past that point. Like one girl I was coaching, she'd gone to the GP, she suspected strongly she had ADHD, and he said to her, but your grades are very good. And people with ADHD generally don't get good grades. What you need to do is this. Try and do some planks. I wish I was making this up, Dale. Do some planks, do some squats, try and do as many squats as you can during the day, and just gave her this very strange exercise routine. So she messaged me at that point. They'd given her the screening paperwork. At least that was something. And she messaged me. She was like, he doesn't believe me. What do I do? So I was like, well, you're just going to have to complete the screening and be as forthright as you can. And then it's going to go to school. Well, then everything's crossed then, isn't it? You've got a GP that doesn't understand ADHD, let alone ADHD in girls, high-achieving girls. Then you've potentially got the next kind of barrier, which is school, and getting them to support.
Yeah. This is the thing. There is, to me, there's a Venn diagram of diagnosis and send. And people seem to think they completely overlap. Yeah. ADHD, autism, that's send. No. I have no additional educational needs. However, I am really screwing up socially and emotionally. But until that really fails you, and then you become send, now we can get support. And this is, to me, the whole mental health leads in schools. To me, that's what this is all about. The diagnosis is almost, it shouldn't go to the Senko in my head. It should almost go to the head of year, or that it's not, yes, it can have huge impacts on learning and things like that. But I think with autism and ADHD, a lot of it is mental health to start with.
You're right. And that support can be put in place regardless of a diagnosis.
Yes.
Yeah. And that support comes down to the individual. And first of all, that's got to start with curiosity.
And that sort of thing is, they've got a diagnosis. Do they go on the SEM register? Are they behind? No. Cool, they don't then. So I've got this diagnosis sitting over here somewhere, but they're not on the SEM register. What do I do with it? And it's like, we should be supporting them with their mental health and in other things, executive function. That's what we should be doing. And I think that's a bit that is completely being missed because it's seen as, autism, ADHD, that's special needs. No, we need to, I show that their Venn diagram, there's SEN, and there is an overlap.
Mhm.
Before we started recording, I mentioned about gifted and talented. I went on a gifted and talented course in the early 90s. It was a big thing. Loads of kids from all the different schools went gifted. And I went in the humanities one, and we did extra work on Saturdays. I really enjoyed it. It was lots of fun. And I saw a post not long ago going, were you on the gifted and talented course when you were in school? And I clicked on it. I went, are you struggling with life now? Are you struggling with all of this? I bet you've been diagnosed with ADHD or autism. And it was like, oh my gosh.
Mhm. Yep.
Oh my gosh, yes. But
absolutely.
yeah, what would have supported all those gifted and talented is actually social stuff.
Yeah.
Mental health things. Learning rules of social, not extra, but there's a bit which is completely missing for me in education around supporting those with or without a diagnosis, but those who are struggling with mental health, which is separate to the Senko.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think certain behaviours in class are indicators, and at times what works for some of our neurodivergent students can get under the skin of teachers. Like there was one girl I was coaching, she was a big doodler, loved to doodle. I'm a doodler. It helps me process. It makes that part of my brain that wants to die with boredom just that little bit less suicidal. So I doodle, but I'm also listening, and it's fab. And I did a course a couple of years ago, and they were like, if anybody's I don't want to use the word kinesthetic learner because I know learning styles is controversial, but it was basically that. If anybody needs to move around in order to process information, feel free. And it felt beautiful. I learned how to do calligraphy. I learned, I was doodling. I improved my doodling. I was drawing. But I was coaching this girl, and she came and she was a major doodler. And she said, I used to get in such trouble for it at school. My exercise books were just covered. But what she was doing was listening. Her listening skills were out of this world. And when I was trying to bridge a bit of a conflict between her and her English teacher, I was saying, you have to let her doodle. She is listening to you. I know it looks like she's not, but she is. And this girl had got 8s and 9s in GCSEs and blown all the teachers away because she was disruptive and confrontational, but she was listening and she was taking everything in, and her emotional intelligence was out of this world. So yeah, what you're saying there about, is it SEND, or is it, do we need to support in unique and individual ways for that particular individual? Regardless of pace and pressure, it's possible to just do very small things like an extra 20 minutes. It's not going to kill anybody, is it?
No.
So, yeah.
And one thing I know, you hear like sort of MPs or any adult with an opinion on SEN in schools and how it wasn't there back in my day. They always think that school is a constant. School is exactly the same as it was back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s. It's not. Technology in school has made a big difference, which in some ways made it more fun, but also turned it into PowerPoint. Just deliver a PowerPoint. I don't have to be engaging. The screen will be engaging for you. But also the internet coming along and the impact that's had on every single person, in terms of constantly changing screens. You watch the TV, so something flashing up constantly to keep us interested. And you go to school, it's nothing. It's boring. It can't compete. There's the social media aspect. So actually, we used to be able to get away. You walked home from school, and as soon as you got in your mum's car, your dad's car, that was it for the day. Nothing else happened in terms of school. Oh no, that social stuff's going on all day, every night, everything. So we can't just say, back in my day, there wasn't all this. ADHD didn't exist. It did, but the demands were completely different. I survived through primary. I got through secondary, started to struggle towards the end. College was an absolute no-starter. University, I could have gone. I did get an offer, and I was just like, no, it's going to be a complete waste. I didn't know why. I just knew it wasn't for me. But all I've done since that day is learn be the best I can and try and help and do all this stuff that I should be. I just can't learn in that very academic way. I need to be slightly different. Also, there are things I struggled with, which is why I didn't have big groups of friends. I wasn't very sociable. I didn't enjoy the non-structured time. I hated. So why would I want to be there?
Yeah, you were lucky and you had that realization and didn't try and like knock a square peg into a round hole.
Yeah. And I just think that actually what I did need support in secondary. Perhaps I didn't have all the information I thought I did. I didn't understand things, and actually I didn't need help with any of my lessons. I maybe needed help understanding life and social all that. That's what I kind of needed help with, not a PSHE lesson, actually something for me. And maybe after 6 weeks of talking to someone, I would have been on a very different trajectory. I would have maybe gone, right, this is what I need. And we've got so much better understanding now. Yeah. So I didn't know about doodling. That probably would have helped me. Yeah. I use social media as my doodle.
Yeah.
I use things like that. Actually, those strategies, you do that, play with that, have a go at that. I'll talk to. There's so much more we could do now with all this understanding. That means that people can thrive in schools with some tweaks.
That's the thing. I think you've hit the nail on the head. The students I talk to talk about things could easily be tweaked. So like they talk about the teacher's voice a lot. That comes up far more than I ever thought it would. And different subjects cause them real issues depending on autism, ADHD, but English always comes out pretty well. I'm not going to try and guess why.
We have a 10-point list of best subjects. No, let's not stay away from that.
And obviously PE, but I think, again, like you said about schools changing, back in my day, it was, school production. There was a music department. There was a vast array of different art teachers who were doing different things in different mediums. And a lot of the time, these were amazing outlets for some of these neurodivergent kids. And I don't know whether time and budget these days allows for all schools, to put on school productions, or whether senior leadership deem it valuable. Do you know what I mean?
I would say, and I bash secondary schools a lot on this podcast, it's not the people in them, it's the curriculum. It's having to get through so much emphasis being put on the results. And therefore you spoon feed and you teach them exactly how to answer every question. It's not about them finding out who they are. It's not about them trying new things. And that's such a heavy curriculum. The teachers haven't got time to be inspirational. And, actually, we're not going to do any learning today. We're going to do this instead, which is all full of learning, but it's inspirational. All those things that, when we think back to school, there'll be a mad science teacher or that art teacher or they inspired you. I feel that due to how much curriculum there is, it's hard for teachers to be inspiring with all these constraints. And if you can't inspire the children, it's hard.
Well, it makes me feel sad for the teachers as well.
Oh, it does.
If you don't, if you love your subject, which you should do, you spend lots of years studying it, and you get no chance to kind of really be passionate about it and go down that rabbit hole every now and then and be inspirational, then it's not going to pass on to the kids either, is it? But it's that's why I loved teaching as long as I did, is because I do still love my subject. And I was that teacher who would go, sack it, I'm not doing that today, I'm doing something more fun and inspirational because it's Thursday afternoon and it's raining and it's a bit windy, and otherwise, it's not going to end well. But yeah, I do feel for teachers these days.
Right, I'm going to wrap it up there. We've been talking for a rather long time, slightly over what we aim for, but that's perfectly fine. And I'm sad that we haven't given everyone a nice 10-point list of things you should do. But the answer
I can give you it, Dale.
But it'll be different every single time, wouldn't it? That's the whole point. There isn't a nice simple. And if anyone says here is a nice simple, they're wrong.
Quite. Yes.
It is about listening and adapting, asking why, being curious, and picking your battles. And in reality, that's going to support every single child.
Yeah.
You shouldn't need a diagnosis to support someone in an ADHD-friendly way. What damage will it do? The answer is none.
Absolutely. Couldn't agree more. Excellent.
So, as always, I always share the contact details for my guests. So in the show notes, you will find lots of contact details for Louise. You can also find links about the work Louise done. So her research into studying the experience of secondary school women with undiagnosed ADHD. So that's linked to in the show notes. And as always, you'll find the show notes wherever you listen to the podcast or on the Sendcast website. And if you want to get in touch, let us know your thoughts, suggest topics or anything else, please send a message to us via our social media accounts, and we're on most of them these days, or send an email to hello@thesendcast.com. The Sendcast is created and produced by us here at B Squared. And do you know about our AI features within our assessment software? Teachers can use our AI to help write their reports or summarise progress. Teachers choose the key achievements and the key next steps for each pupil, so it is very personalised. But the AI takes the hard work away, telling what you want to focus on and creating lovely paragraphs of text, and soon it can even mirror your style of writing. The system can also translate that content into 40 different languages, helping to engage parents where English is not their first language. Visit the B Squared website or click on the meeting link in the show notes to book a meeting with me to take you through our assessment software and its AI features. So thank you for listening. We'll be back next week with another episode of the Sendcast. It's goodbye from me.
Bye, Dale. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.